Hello everybody, my name is Alan and I'm a Specialist International Student Advisor, and I'm here with my colleague Hannah.
Hello, I'm one of the Assistant International Student Advisors.
And we're here to deliver a webinar for students who are coming for a studies abroad semester or for an academic year, study abroad at King's from outside the European area, and you'll need a visa. So this is a webinar for you. And we are hoping during the process of this webinar to cover the two main types of visas that you're going to apply for. We'll talk a little bit about the Tier 4 student visa, but we're going to spend the majority of time on short-term study visas. We'll talk about the application process for these visas, what happens afterwards, and we'll also briefly touch on what happens if your visa application is refused, although this happens very rarely. We just want to say that, as ever, the UK's immigration rules change quite regularly. So the information in this presentation is correct as of now, which is the 1st of June, the 2nd of June actually, which is the 2nd of June. But do keep checking with us if you have any questions when you're making your application. We're happy to receive any queries via email, and we'll give out our contact details at the end. Okay, so just a little bit about who we are. So Hannah and myself are international student advisors, and we're part of the Student Advice Service at King's. We advise prospective and current students at King's on immigration, working during and after your studies as an international student, and we also help you with your visas when you're coming to King's, and this webinar is part of that, and settling into life in the UK as an international student in London. In terms of advising on student immigration, we're the only staff at King's who are regulated to provide this advice, and that's why in the corner of this slide I've included a logo of the Office of the Immigration Services Commissioner, the OISC, who regulate us and allow us to provide that advice. So if you have any questions about your visa, we are the people to ask. We're also members of UKISA, the UK Council for International Student Affairs. That's the body who trains us. We keep our website up to date and it's full of information, so any questions, just have a look on our website, kcl.ac.uk/advice. All right, so first of all, very briefly, why are you going to need a visa for the UK? If you're coming to the UK from outside of Europe, then you'll need a reason to be here and you'll need immigration permission in order to enter the country. So if you're coming here to study, you'll need a visa. And if you're coming to study for more than 6 months, then you'll need what's called a Tier 4 general visa, which is the longer term student visa category for the UK. However, a lot of you will be coming to the UK for one study abroad semester. If you're coming for less than 6 months, then the visa type that you will need is called a short-term study visa. For either visa application, you complete the form online, and then you'll need to prepare supporting documents that need to be ready before you submit the online application form. So what visa do you need to apply for? So this table kind of summarizes it. I'll start actually on the right-hand side column. For 2 semesters, if you're coming for a whole academic year, you have no option on this. You need a Tier 4 visa because that's the only student visa type that's valid for longer than 6 months. If you're coming for 1 semester, then you've got then the vast majority of you will be applying for a short-term study visa, which is valid for a maximum of 6 months and should cover your semester of study abroad at King's. However, occasionally you might wish to apply for a Tier 4 visa. If you do wish to do this, then you need to contact us, send a message through King's Apply to Admissions detailing why you particularly want to apply for a Tier 4 visa. What's also important is I've included a row at the bottom called standard visitor or tourist. You can't study in the UK for your study abroad semester on a tourist visa. Don't do it because you won't be able to enroll. Last but not least, just a note at the bottom, if you're undertaking the Study Abroad Plus program that includes an internship, you'll need to apply for a Tier 4 visa. That's the only exception because if you've got a short-term study visa, you can't work while you're in the UK. So if you're going to be doing an internship as part of your study abroad program, then that's the only other reason why you would need Tier 4.
So if you do apply for a Tier 4 visa, the first thing you'll need to do is get a CAS number or a CAS statement. This is your confirmation of acceptance of studies. This is just an electronic document which contains your personal information, and it has a unique 14-digit number, which you will often hear referred to as your CAS number. This is the number that you will need to type into your Tier 4 application form. It contains all your information about the way that King's has assessed you and the course that you plan to study. This will be available to you through King's Apply. You will not need to apply for this independently. This is just an example of what the CAS statement will look like. So as you can see on this one, we've blanked out the student's personal information, but what you can see is that in the red box, we've put a little red box around the CAS number there, and that's your 14-digit unique number. So that would be the number that you will need to copy and paste into your Tier 4 application form. There is also lots of information in your CAS that you will need to complete your Tier 4 application form, so you should keep it handy before you start your application. It's also important that as soon as you get your CAS number and your CAS statement, that you check all the information is correct and accurate, because it will have to match any supporting documents that you supply for your visa application. So just double check that CAS, and if anything is incorrect, get back in contact through King's Apply and they can look into that for you.
Okay, in terms of the documents that you're going to need to prepare for your Tier 4 visa application, I've got a list on the screen in front of you. So you'll need some, maybe all, but most likely just some of them. So you'll need to show proof that you meet the financial requirements for your visa, proof that you meet the academic requirements for the course, so what qualifications you showed to admissions in order to get an unconditional offer of a place on the semester. You'll need your CAS number, as Hannah's just said. You'll need your passport and 2 passport-sized photos. Obviously, you will need to complete the online application form and pay for it. It's unlikely if you're coming for 1 semester, but if you're coming for a whole academic year at King's and you're from a certain list of countries, you may need to get a certificate confirming that you're clear of tuberculosis or TB. There is on the gov.uk website, you can type in, check if you need a TB test, and it will show the list of countries as well as the clinics where you can be checked for TB. Just going up to the penultimate bullet point, the immigration health surcharge. If you're coming to the UK for more than 6 months, you'll need to pay an additional fee with your visa application that entitles you to use the UK's NHS or National Health Service just in the same way as a UK resident does. We'll talk a little bit more about healthcare towards the end of this presentation. The last thing that I need to underline, and this goes for everything that we say, for all documents that you're providing in support of your visa application, these need to be the original paper hard copy documents. You can't use photocopies, you can't use things that you've scanned and then printed out. You need to submit the originals. If you use photocopies, it's likely this could lead to a refusal. So, how do you apply for your visa? So to apply for a Tier 4 visa from outside the UK, you'll need to fill in the form at the Visa for UK website, and we've got the link on the slide there. Just to highlight, we'll be sending out the slides for this presentation, and a recording will be up on YouTube, so you don't need to furiously write down the notes right now. You'll be able to watch this presentation later on, and you'll be able to look at the slides as well, and you'll be able to click through on the links there. When you're filling in the visa application form online, give yourself an hour to complete it. You'll need the details on your CAS. You won't be able to complete the visa application form without your CAS. And we've got our online guide to completing the form available on our website as well.
So we understand that it is tricky if you do need to apply for a Tier 4 application, and some things can get confusing. We're not going to go into too much detail in this webinar. However, we have got other webinars which we've done just for Tier 4 applications. So there's one for Tier 4 entry clearance, which is just when you apply for your Tier 4 visa from outside of the UK. And there is also one on applying as a low-risk national. You can find both of these on our YouTube channel. If you're not sure what a low-risk national is, you can either refer to the information on the YouTube channel or just go to gov.uk where you can find this information. We have advice guides on applying within the UK and outside the UK, and these links will be available to you. And from there you can see the advice guides to help you through your application. We have FAQs on our website, which go into detail on Tier 4 application process and documents you need to provide. Throughout the summer, we will be holding virtual fairs and online chats. These are not just for students applying for a Tier 4 visa, they are also for students applying for short-term study visas. So feel free to attend any of these and have a chat to us and discuss any questions you've got on your application or just studying in the UK. On another note, outside of the university, there is UKISA, which Alan mentioned earlier. Now, the UKISA website is extremely useful. We used ourselves for finding out some information, and we would strongly recommend, if you have any questions that haven't been answered via any of the other means, take a look at UKISA website, because you can normally find an answer on there.
Brilliant. Okay, so we're going to move our focus for the rest of this webinar really onto short-term study visas. And a short-term study visa is likely to be the most appropriate visa option if you're coming to the UK for a course up to 6 months. And the other categories for short-term study are listed there. But if you're coming for a single study abroad semester at King's, then you'll be doing a course of up to 6 months, and a short-term study visa is likely to be the most appropriate visa for you. Now, you can't apply for this visa from within the UK, and there are 2 ways to apply for a short-term study visa, and this depends on your nationality. So the process for coming to the UK is different depending on whether you're considered a visa national or a non-visa national. And Appendix 2 of the UKVI's immigration rules has a list of all of the visa nationals. If your country is not listed in this link, then you're a non-visa national. If the country is listed, you're a visa national. And as you can imagine, this list is quite long. Here it is. So this is the list of all of the countries who are considered visa nationals. And you'll notice that there are asterisks next to some of them. But so, as an example, not on this list is the United States. So if you are from if you're a national of the USA, then you are a non-visa national and you're not on this list. However, if you are Chinese, you can see the People's Republic of China is listed, and so Chinese nationals are visa nationals. So that's just an example of how this list works.
So if you are a non-visa national, then you don't need to apply for your short-term study visa prior to travelling to the UK, which means you don't need to look into applying for this before you head towards the UK and the airport. Instead, when you get to the border, your passport will be stamped with your short-term visa and you can enter the UK. You will need to get a short-term study visa letter. Now, this should just be issued by the Study Abroad office, and you shouldn't need to apply for this specifically. You should just receive it. You should hear from them by the end of June, but you can find lots more information on their website and also contact details on there for the Study Abroad team. This just gives a little bit of an example of what will happen when you get to the airport. So as a non-visa national, we would recommend that you still carry with you your short-term study letter and your recent bank statements. This is just to show that you can fund yourself during the UK. This will be there so that if you need to discuss with the officers at the border why you're coming to the UK, you have the proof with you and you can demonstrate that you are a student coming for a short period to the UK. They will then stamp your visa, sorry, your passport with your visa, and it'll look similar to the example that's on the bottom right of the slide there. So it should say for 6 months on there, because that's how much you're allowed as a short-term visa, as a short-term student. So if you just want, what you should do is double check this when you're issued with it, just to make sure that it does say a short-term student and it doesn't say a tourist or visa visitor, as this is not valid and you will not be able to study on a tourist visa. So it's just saying again that we should double check that visa when you've been issued with it. It's a good idea to check it just before you leave the border office desk, You want to make sure that that is the correct visa as soon as possible. If it's not, then you need to speak to them about it and get that sorted as a short-term student visa. The stamp in your passport allows you a single entry to the UK. So this means if you need to leave the UK at any point and return to the UK to continue with your studies, you will need to repeat the same process and get another short-term study visa. You will also need to carry your short-term student visa letter and a bank statement with you, like before, when you re-enter the UK, and the border officer may stamp you back into the UK again. If you have previously been refused a visa for the UK, you will need to apply for a short-term visa in advance of travelling to the UK. This is the exception for non-visa nationals. So just to repeat that, if you have been previously refused a visa for the UK, you will need to look into applying for that visa before you make your travels towards the UK. And this will be the same process as for visa nationals, which we'll be covering on the next slides.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about how visa nationals apply for a short-term study visa. And as Hannah said, visa nationals need to fill in an application form online, and they need to apply for their short-term study visa for entry clearance before they travel to the UK. So, first of all, you apply on the Visa for UK website. And this website, it can be a bit confusing in terms of finding the correct options to set up the form for a short-term study visa application. So you need to select the following options. So the first question will be reason for visit, and you select study. Then under the visa type, you select study again, non-points-based system. And then the visa subtype, you click short-term student, 6 months. Some visa confirmation questions will appear, and you answer no to all of those. And just to give you a taste of how it will look, the screen will look like this if you answer the questions as I've just described. So there you go. So study non-points-based system, study short-term student 6 months, and then answer no to the 3 visa confirmation questions. And then once you've done that and you're ready to start the visa application form, click on Create Application in the bottom left. Fill in the form, and then you will complete the form and make your payment, and then you will submit your supporting documents and biometric information, and by biometric information I mean fingerprints and photograph, at the local visa application centre. Now, for a short-term study visa application, you can actually apply in any country apart from the UK. Generally speaking, it takes around 3 weeks to process a short-term study visa application, but it can differ from country to country. The best way to check for an estimate of how long it is likely to take is to use the UKVI's online web calculator for processing times, and the link is there. Standard short-term study visa application is the equivalent of £93 in the currency where you're applying. But if you do need the visa to be processed more quickly, you can apply for a priority service. These do carry additional fees, but it might be possible to have your visa application processed more quickly than the standard service. So I also mentioned about supporting documents that you will submit at the visa application centre, and these are your passport, one passport-sized colour photo of yourself, the visa support letter that Hannah already talked about that you will get from Study Abroad. So the Study Abroad office should create this short-term study visa letter for you, and I think that will be communicated to you via the admissions team. So you will need that one. And then you'll also need evidence that you've got enough money to support yourself during your stay in the UK. So this usually takes the form of bank statements. How much money do you need? Well, this is a very good question because there are no specific requirements for how much you're expected to show as a short-term study visa applicant. Instead, we would recommend that you show at least £1,265 per month for your living expenses to cover the full duration of your semester. The reason why we've chosen this amount to recommend to you is this is what the UKVI requires for students applying for a Tier 4 long-term student visa for the UK, and this is how much per month the UKVI has decided it costs to live in London as a student. So that's what we would recommend preparing. Last but not least, we'd also recommend that you provide details of your accommodation while you're going to be in the UK and details of your travel plans. And for accommodation and flights, you should be able to show provisional bookings without having to pay anything. Try wherever possible not to make payments for your travel or for your accommodation before you've got your before you know that your visa application's been successful. This isn't always possible, I do understand that, but where possible, just try and book without having paid everything or just paying a deposit. So again, some things to note. So once you've got your passport back and your visa application has been successful, your short-term study visa should look something like the picture that's on screen. And again, just like with the CAS that we showed before, we've blanked out parts of this for confidentiality. But again, you can see that it says short-term student on the visa, and this is really, really important for the same reasons as Hannah said before. It needs to say short-term student because if it doesn't, and if it says something different like standard visitor, you won't be able to enroll at King's because you can't study on that visa. If it says something other than short-term student, when you open your passport and look at the visa sticker, you need to go back to the visa application centre where you submitted your application, tell them a mistake has been made and that they need to correct it. Just like with the stamp for non-visa nationals, your short-term student visa should be valid for 6 months. And this time, you can see on the example as well, it allows you multiple entry into the UK during the validity period of 6 months. But if you travel out and back into the UK, just make sure you keep carrying your short-term study visa letter and the bank statement in your hand luggage, just in case an officer at the UK border wants you to talk about your student status again. Just so that you can explain to them, yes, I'm a student at King's, I'm doing a study abroad semester, and this is how I'm supporting myself.
So if you are coming here on a short-term study visa, whether it's a stamp or a sticker in your passport, you will still be subject to some conditions during your stay in the UK. So the first point is that you can't undertake any work or employment. This includes both unpaid and voluntary work. You can't access any public funds or state benefits. Public funds and state benefits include things like housing benefits and child tax credits and things like that. So you can't claim benefits whilst studying here in the UK on your visa. You cannot bring family members as your dependents on a short-term study visa. Students who are here, some students on a Tier 4 visa can bring dependents, but on a short-term study visa, you cannot bring family members with you as your dependents. You also can't extend your short-term study visa within the UK. Once you've completed your studies in the UK, UKVI do expect you to leave the UK quickly. This is the case even if your visa is still valid for weeks or months after your completion. However, we wouldn't expect you to leave the day that you finish your studies. We would expect you to wrap up the things in the UK and leave within around a week of completing your course.
Okay, earlier on I said that I'd go into the details of healthcare a little bit more, and this is now that time. So while you're in the UK on a short-term study visa, if you require medical treatment, then there are some treatments under the UK's NHS which are free for you to access. Those include if you need to go to hospital urgently, the accident and emergency, A&E, will treat you. However, you won't have free follow-up treatment if you end up having to stay in hospital for an extended period of time. For example, if you break your ankle and require physiotherapy, I'll tell you in a minute, but you're likely to have to pay for that treatment. But the initial visit to A&E, accident and emergency at a hospital, is free under the NHS. Family planning services are also free, sexual health treatments and diagnoses are free, and treatment of certain infectious diseases is covered as well. At the beginning, we talked about something called the immigration health surcharge. You don't need to pay this as a short-term student, but if you didn't apply for a Tier 4 visa and pay this surcharge, then we strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you obtain private medical insurance during your study abroad semester in the UK, because just as I said, if you have hospital treatment or any other ongoing medical treatment, you may be liable to pay for that, and this can run into thousands. So please get insurance, and then that means that you're covered if the worst does happen.
So when you're travelling towards the UK for your studies, we would suggest that you carry a copy of your offer letter and recent bank statements in your hand luggage. This is just in case an officer at the border asks you any questions about why you're coming to the UK, and you will be able to explain to them and have the evidence that you're coming here to undertake a course at King's College, and you've got that evidence with you in your hand luggage. We would also suggest that you would try to avoid travelling to the UK via Ireland. This is because there are no border controls between the two countries, and if your Tier 4 visa sticker is not stamped, it could cause problems for you later on. For the students who have applied for a Tier 4 visa, or will be applying for a Tier 4 visa, you will need to pick up a biometric residence permit, or BRP, once you arrive in the UK. There's an example of this on the left-hand side of the page. It's a pink card that's credit card sized, and it will be that is your visa, and it will be valid for the full length of your time in the UK. If you are applying for this, the Tier 4, and you're going to get your BRP, whilst applying for your Tier 4 online, you can choose to either collect your card at King's College or at a post office near where you'll be staying in the UK. If you would like to collect it at a post office, you should select the residential address, and the UKVI will choose a post office near where you'll be staying. Alternatively, you can select alternative location and type in the code that you can see on the screen, 2HE432. And in this case, you can collect your BRP at King's College, and a time for this will be built into your schedule. If you have applied for a short-term study visa, the stamp in your passport will cover the full length of your visa, and you will not need to collect a BRP once you arrive in the UK. So this is just a summary of what we've been talking about. So there's a few things that you need to do once you arrive in the UK. So some students will need to register with the police if you are studying on a Tier 4 visa. This will appear in your passport or on a letter from UKVI or on your BRP, and it will say police registration. This only applies to students of certain nationalities, and you can find more information on whether this applies to you on gov.uk, but it will also be on one of those documents that I mentioned to let you know whether or not you need to register. Students on a short-term study visa do not need to register with the police. We spoke about NHS, work during studies, and whether or not you need to collect a BRP card in the previous slides, but this just summarises it for you so you can have a quick look.
Okay. Last but not least, I just quickly want to mention about what happens if your visa application is refused. This is rare, so please don't worry about it too much, and hopefully if you follow the steps that Hannah and I have been talking about, your application should go through without any problems. But occasionally, students are refused a visa. And if you are refused a short-term study visa application for entry clearance before you travel to the UK, unfortunately, there isn't a lot that you can do in terms of there's no rights of appeal or no rights for an administrative review of the decision. The best thing to do is to reapply if you can and if you have enough time. Supply as much evidence as you can that you're coming to the UK just for your period of study, and then you're going to return to a permanent life outside the UK. The vast majority of refusals that I've seen for short-term study is because the person who was assessing your visa application wasn't convinced that you were going to leave the UK and go back to your studies or go back home after your semester. So you just need to make sure that you provide as much information, so that could be your permanent home address, the course that you're studying in another country. Just provide as much information as you can about that. If you're refused entry or detained at the UK border, however, this is something that's different and you need to try and let us know as soon as possible, try and email us any scans of paperwork or documentation that you've been issued by the Home Office or by the border officer. You can give us a call on the number on screen, and then we can talk to you to find out what happened, what the paperwork or the decision means for you, and how to move forward. And in all cases, you can scan and email us any documents of the things that I've mentioned above, or ask us any questions or request advice by emailing us at advice@kcl.ac.uk. And here's that email address again. So we've actually finished the slides now. So we've got some time for questions that you can email to us at advice@kcl.ac.uk. And we look forward to hearing from you soon and to welcoming you to King's for your study abroad semesters very soon. So take care. Thank you very much. Bye.